if you're a graphic designer, you should be on Instagram. You should be on Pinterest. So there's just different social medias for different things. And some people think that they have to be on all of them. That's just a huge waste of your time. And then you need to make sure that you're consistent on all those. Your website, the way your website looks, the way your Facebook looks, as much as you can control how your Facebook looks, should be the same. The messaging should be the same. The way you interact with people on Facebook should be the same way that your website is interacting with people.
Welcome to Marketing Stuff. I'm excited for today's show. We have a true branding wizard on the show today. Thank you for joining me. If you're coming back, welcome back to the fold. Hey, family. If this is your first time, we welcome you. The water's fine. Come on in. I appreciate everyone's continued support. We're here to help you level up your marketing game in a way that you don't feel like you're drowning. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any nuggets that we drop on the Marketing Stuff podcast. But enough about the show. Let's dive into the good stuff. Today's guest is a true brand developer who's built his reputation on helping small business owners set themselves apart. He sets himself apart with his love of cigars, and he believes a good cigar is the perfect way to wind down after a day of meeting. Everyone help me welcome James to the Marketing Stuff podcast. What's up, brother?
Maurice, how you doing?
Man, I'm out here winning. I cannot complain. We got a good day's worth of podcasting in, so it's about to be fire.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited.
Yeah. So, interestingly enough, most of the people that have been on the show we've met through TikTok. I did not meet James through TikTok. I met him in the real world, the real life, actual peopling. We met at a networking event through like 1 million cups, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We argued about something. I remember that our first conversation ever was arguing about something. I don't remember what it was.
I don't either. But that definitely sounds like truth. Yeah. That sounds like truth. I think I walked away like, I don't like this guy.
You wouldn't be the first.
But after a few arguments, I was like, all right. He's all right. He's a lot to handle, but he's all right. He's a good guy.
I appreciate it.
So on today's show, we're going to be talking about branding, helping give some context as to what it is, some pieces that you may need for your brand identity. But let's segue into kind of the first piece, because before you can really have a good conversation about branding, I think it's important to really talk about what is it. So James, help us unpack that from your standpoint of what is branding.
Yeah, so just about every brand strategist has tried to come up with their own clever definition of brand or branding. I don't. I prefer to just use Marty Neumeier's definition of brand, which is a person's gut feeling about your business or product or your name. So when they think of you or they think of the product that you sell, they see your logo, what's the first thing they feel? What's their gut feeling about all that? And I really like that. I like the phrase. I've heard the phrase, your vibe attracts your tribe a lot. And to me, that's a really good description of branding. There's a lot of products out there that are the same, and they are competing with each other, not on the quality or price of their product, but on their brand, which is
right.
It feels kind of silly because at the end of the day, it's a product and you're buying the product to do a thing. And if it does the same thing that the other product does, why does it matter? And we could go on and on. I'm not a psychologist, and there's probably a lot of info out there about that. But all that I care about is the result. I know that it is a fact that people in 2023 are making purchasing decisions based on companies' brands more than they used to. Yeah.
So you and I get into it sometimes about branding. We have healthy debates because I am still at the core of who I am, a performance marketer, right? I want to see an input that has an output that is measurable. But the the way that I go about marketing is a lot of content marketing, right? And so like you can't really be a like hardcore content marketer and then be like, I think branding bunk, right? Because at the end of the day, especially, and we'll talk more about this as we get into later on in the show, but with stuff like GPT, AI, and companies like Taylor Brands, that's really making the knowledge era like we talked. I think people have talked about this before. We were in an age of like access to knowledge, right? And that was kind of the thing. But I think that's coming to an end as the growth of AI kind of like says like, well, I can get on here and ask a really dumb question and get a really good answer, right? Like, so I might edit that out. Maybe, I don't know. So then that has to put us in a place and really help us understand why is it that I want to figure out the best way to ask this question, because as a new business owner, I think the concept of branding can be so woo-woo and a little ethereal,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so why is it that creating a brand is so valuable outside of this idea of the vibe is your tribe? Help me understand, like, as a small business owner, if I've never heard of branding, what true value do I get out of trying to build a brand for my business?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think one of the more frustrating parts about branding is that there is not a tangible, measurable outcome. You know, there with marketing, you can create a campaign and you can say, oh, I put $1,000 into this marketing campaign and I increased my sales by $3,000, whatever. So you can be like, oh, that was a successful campaign. With branding, branding, I believe is obviously, I believe it's incredibly important, but it is harder to measure. It's harder to say, oh, I took these steps and increased my revenue by this amount. To see the value of branding, you pretty much just have to look at some existing brands. You can't look at Apple and tell me that they got to where they are strictly by, focusing on building a really good product. Obviously, if their product wasn't good, they wouldn't be successful. But Apple is one of the first companies to really, really figure out the power of branding. Everybody has a certain feeling when they think about Apple, and the people who really like Apple products, pulling out their iPhone or their iPod 10 years ago makes them feel a certain way. And there are other products. I mean, there's other phones that do what iPhones do. There's other MP3 players that do what iPods do. But man, you remember when the iMac came out and they were like blue and green and like red. No other computer looked like that. They were like round. Every other computer was square. It just their commercials are completely different. They put a lot of effort into the commercials. Their commercials tend to be very creative and artistic. And they're telling you, hey, if you own an Apple product, this is you. This is kind of your vibe. This is your lifestyle. This is the kind of person you are.
Yeah.
And people buy into that and they pay a lot of money to be a part of that. And they're not the only ones. I mean, Nike, what's the difference between Nike and Reebok? Probably nothing. But Nike is 10 times, if not more, successful than Reebok. There's just example after example of products out there that, not saying that their product isn't good, but they wouldn't be nearly as successful as they are if they weren't focusing on building that brand, and if they weren't always thinking about how do we make people feel? How does our product, our business, our brand, how do our commercials make people feel?
Right. So you bring up an interesting point, and so when you start crafting your brand, do you find your customers first and then craft a brand that resonates, or do you craft a brand that resonates with what you're trying to build and then use that to attract your customers?
My advice to people is always, you don't have to hire a brand strategist on day one, right? Spend a bunch of money to get someone to come in and help you craft a brand. But 100% need to be thinking about your brand on day one. Every decision that you make, you should at least have a thought in your head about, is this on brand? When you're going to, I mean, everything. If you're going to hire a person, if you're looking for a business partner, if you're just trying to come up with a logo, if you're trying to come up with a name for your business, when you're picking manufacturers and suppliers for your product, everything you do, you should be asking yourself, is this on brand? And to be honest, a lot of times it's not going to matter. You're going to be like, well, either one of these suppliers, could be on brand or off brand. But an example would be, there's a local company here called Ecolips, and they sell like lip balm. And as you can probably tell by the name Ecolips, as a company, they're very concerned about being environmentally sustainable, right? So when they're looking for a supplier, and if they've kind of narrowed it down to two suppliers, and they both have a good product, both have a really good price, but one of those suppliers also has this mindset of being environmentally sustainable. Ecolips has to ask, that question. And they probably at this point don't have to actually ask that question. It's probably obvious for them, but we know which one of those suppliers they're going to go with, right? One of those suppliers is going to be on brand and one of them is not. And I'm assuming they do the same thing. And I've actually talked to the owner, Steve, about this. And when it comes to an employee at the very bottom of the ladder, it doesn't matter quite as much. If we're talking about someone who's just in the factory packaging things up into boxes, you probably aren't considering your brand so much when you're hiring that person. But if you're hiring, you need a new chief of operations. When you're interviewing candidates for that position, you better be thinking about your brand. Is this person that I'm hiring going to be on brand and help us, attract the right customers or not?
Yeah, that's a fair point. That also brings up another point. So you said, like, if you're hiring somebody on the manufacturing floor, you probably aren't. But the question is, why not?
Yeah, and I try not to be mean when I talk about this, but the simple truth is there are certain people in your business who just aren't going to have an impact on certain aspects of your business. Now, it's important that the people you hire are hardworking and have good work ethic, regardless of what position they're in. But there's countless employees at Ecolips and other similar companies that you and I will never have heard of. No one's ever going to hear about them. They might work there for a few months and quit. They might work there for 25 years, but they're not really having an impact on the company's brand. They're there, and that's why work ethic is important, because that if they're not doing their job correctly, that could actually affect the brand, the reputation of the product. If they're supposed to put 25 sticks of lip balm in a box and they're consistently only putting 24, and people are getting boxes and they're missing one, that's going to reflect poorly. So it's important to hire people that are going to do the job well, but it doesn't necessarily mean, all the people in the factory don't have to be environmentally conscious, because what they're doing isn't going to affect the environment. What the chief of operations does, the kind of decisions that person makes, the suppliers they go with and things like that, the materials they choose to use, that could affect the environment. And so if that's part of your brand and what you care about, then it's, you need to make sure you hire the right person for that COO position. But the people down there just packing up, sticks and boxes, doesn't really matter so much if they're on board with your mission.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to think about it. I don't quite agree, but that's one of those times where it's like, and if Steve were here, I think he would agree that there are times where they need people to put sticks in boxes, and they cannot achieve their mission without people putting sticks in boxes. And at some point, there's like, I would love someone that recycles putting sticks in boxes, but I don't need that person to be a recycling advocate to put sticks in boxes. So I feel you in what you're saying. I think one of the things, like, you start thinking about companies that, their brand is kind of their bread and butter. I think sometimes those are the ones that are like, no, everybody here needs to be a recycling advocate, right? And then that brings in the question of how does that change the business for in the long run when the person that is everybody that's putting sticks in boxes recycles, right? So we can unpack that another day. We might do like a marketing stuff. I don't know, cigar and chat. I don't know.
I would love that. I think I did. I
But
think I discussed this with Steve on my podcast. What's it called? A Load of BS. We just did like 7 episodes. This is a pretty short podcast, but one of those episodes was with Steve because Steve owns like 400 businesses, like 5, but it feels like 400 sometimes. And so obviously I wanted to talk to him about branding. And I think we did discuss that a little bit, the importance of, how important is it that every single employee in your business, is on board with your mission. And it can depend on what your mission is too. Maybe environmentally, friendly isn't as big of a deal, but what if you're a business that makes vegan food for vegans, and somebody finds out that some of your employees eat meat? I mean, maybe some people are like, who cares, as long as the product is legit and vegan. But other people might be like, no, because vegan is, it's like a lifestyle. It's something I care about. I don't want this vegan product to be being made by a meat eater, so it's kind of a decision you have to make. Like, how much do you think people are going to care about this? How much do you care about it?
right. No, I think that's absolutely fair and worth another conversation. So you heard it here. We'll do a deep dive on like the importance of how far do you go with it, and just kind of like sit around and drink and talk. That'd be another format for the show. But so we talked a lot about like this customer aspect and marketing people. We often talk about like know your customer, but like as a small business owner or a new marketer, like how do you really figure out who your customer is? Because there's like so much out there. So if you were talking to a new business owner or a new marketer that's like, I really want to do this, but I don't know the first step, what would you tell them the first step would be?
Yeah. So for a lot of people, and not everybody, but for a lot of people, they are their own target audience. So, going back to Steve, if Steve was wondering who is my customer, who am I going to sell this eco-friendly lip balm to? Well, you're selling it to yourself, probably. So that's a good place to look. Find other people who are like you. There's also, you can look at other products. There's a good chance that whatever product you're about to bring to market, you're probably not the first one. Somebody out there is probably already making what you make. And so you can try to look at their audience, go to their Facebook page, and just take the time to look at 20 random people who have engaged with your competitor's Facebook page, and go to their Facebook profiles and just look at their stuff, see what they're posting, see if you can find some common denominators. And I would recommend doing that with, try to find a competitor. To get the best data for yourself, you would want to compare yourself to a competitor who's a lot like your product, but at the same time, that could be a red flag, because you're like, well, if they're very similar to me, how am I going to stand out? So there's a little bit of a, you want to find ways to stand out, but you also are just looking for good comparative data. So I would at least look at 2 or 3 different competitors, see who they're selling to, look at their reviews, see what people are saying that they like about this product, see what people are saying they don't like about this product, see if there's been any scandals. I found out this vegan company hired a meat eater. See if that's something that people are caring about. And I think that's step 1 is competitive analysis. That I think is just trying to see, how are you similar to your competitors? How are you different? How could you be different?
Yeah, I think that's great advice, especially as you're getting started. Sometimes you just don't have enough information. And like, people are like, find your ideal target audience. And you're like, I just started yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just decided I was going to do this yesterday. I don't even have a clue of who the person is. I know that it's people that want vegan burgers, but I don't know like what that person actually looks like or where they go. And And sometimes I will say when you are the target audience, it's very difficult to separate yourself from the business and then say, what do I actually do when I'm looking for a product or a service to solve a problem? Because here's where you have to be careful. If you're the entrepreneur starting a business to solve a problem, you are different than someone else. So like you have to respect that difference too at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
because like most people don't wake up and go, I'm going to start a business, or they don't roll out of bed like, I can't wait to create a marketing campaign for this. Like they just
you
don't do
that,
it.
but other people do.
I do. I'm geeked. I'm like, I can't wait to get into this. But I think that makes us special, and because of that, we have to be mindful that like, yes, we're the target audience, but we're also different. And so you have to step back and say, if I was, and this is no shade to any clients or customers, what I'm about to say, this is real. If I was a lazier version of myself, where would I go? Because more often than not, like, and I say lazy as like, look, I don't want to put in the work to find the answer. And more often than not, that's your clients and your customers, right? Like I want a vegan burger, but I don't necessarily want to spend 100 hours, the 100 hours that you spent, to find the right recipe for a vegan burger, right? So that path that you took to find the right recipe is the value that you bring to your customer, and saying, I'm going to cut that 100 hours out and just give you a 15-minute recipe book that'll show you how to make it, and tons of really great recipes that make it, vegan burgers so great you think it's mooing. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. So I appreciate that context about doing the competitive research. If you've never done competitive research before, you can make it really informal for anybody listening. Just go and look at their messaging, look at the people that like their Facebook page or their TikTok page or social media page, and then look at like their pricing and see where the gaps are. And then, like James said, check out their reviews, right? You can also do some competitive research or customer insight research on places like Amazon and Goodreads, just to see what people are saying about the books or magazines that are designed to solve those problems. So just a little tidbit for anybody looking to do some research and they're like, I don't even know where to start. So let's talk a little bit about this branding aspect, because you really got into the beginning and you were like, your vibe attracts your tribe, right? But there's a lot of confusion about what a brand is. So we get this idea that like, I got to work on my brand, and then you got people working on their logo on their website, right? And we know that some of that stuff is a part of it. So talk to us a little bit about what are the key pieces of a brand identity. And if I were just getting started and I, limited budget, what would be, I guess, the 5 most important components that you would say, if you have money and time, spend it here?
Yeah, I feel like I go back and forth on this about every 5 minutes when I think about, like how important is a logo.
Yeah.
There's, look at Nike's logo. Probably the best example of the absolute most minimalist, simple logo. Apple's logo was more complex. They had like the rainbow colors in there, and then they super simplified it. It's literally just the outline of an apple with a bite taken out of it. But then you look at GoDaddy's original logo, which was like a little doodle of a dude with like orange hair and like green. It was just not minimalist, not simple. And I think so to answer the question, like what is a brand identity? That's basically just all the visual aspects, of a brand. So it's your logo, it's your website, it's merchandise, it's your storefront if you're a brick and mortar. Your presentation when someone walks into your store, is it a mess or is it put together? It's just all the visual aspects of your brand. And I mean, I think when you're sitting down and you're like, all right, I need a logo. What should the logo look like? The logo should be recognizable, and it should be memorable. Everything else, like I said, doesn't really matter as much. Follow the trends. Right now, I think minimalist is kind of the trend. So maybe, if that's what people are finding visually appealing right now, go with that. But make sure that your logo is easy to recognize. So when someone sees it, nobody looks at a Nike logo and goes, now what is that again? Is that the Champion logo? Like it's easy to, there's no other logo out there that looks like it. It's easy to remember. I think it's probably helpful if you showed somebody your logo and then 5 days later you met up with them and said, hey, can you just sketch my logo real quick from memory? That logo I showed you 5 days ago, and see how good they are at recreating that logo just from memory. If they do a pretty good job, I think that's a good sign. And the one piece of advice I give people is your logo doesn't have to describe your business. Nobody has to look at your logo and know what your business is about based on the logo. When you look at the Nike swoosh, that doesn't tell you that they sell athletic equipment. When you look at an apple with a bite taken out of it, that doesn't say that they sell high-end electronics. You don't have to try to describe your business in your logo. And I would honestly say find a good designer, but don't stress out a ton about your logo. I would say find a good designer. You should probably be paying no less than $1,000 for your logo. I don't care if you're the smallest business in the world. Find someone who's good at what they do and just say, make me logo, please, and then walk away. Let them do what they do. Don't stress out about it. If GoDaddy can be as successful as they are with that stupid ass little doodle that they did, and then years later they come back and redesign it to this weird little,
like a leaf,
looks
thing.
like 2 eggs or something. They were ahead, they didn't know how valuable eggs were going to be. They were ahead of their time. We look at that logo and we're like, damn, they got 2 eggs. They rolling in the dough.
That's a $10 million
Uh-huh.
price of inflation just increased the value exponentially.
Yep.
No, so it's interesting, right? So this is one of those things that like James and I disagree on, right? The like how much you should pay for the logo. So I'll be honest with you. I have never paid $1,000 for a logo. Never. I don't know
Me neither.
when at what point in my career I would be okay with it, right? And I guess the answer is when the scale is going to cost me more than the thing, right? So like if it's going to cost me $1 million to replace all the assets, am I willing to pay, 10 grand? Of course, right? Because I want it to be right. But if it costs me $200 to replace all the assets, am I willing to pay $1,000? No, I'm not. So I personally, and I think so I'm going to share another perspective here. I think if you are knowledgeable about what you want and can be directive without being constrictive, I think that you can find somebody to do it for less than $1,000.
Yeah.
If you have no idea what you want, you have no direction of where you're going, and you just want someone to take your abstract thoughts and ideas and turn it into something magical, then you need to pay more, right? So think about it on the scale of work. So I just had someone do some logo redesign stuff, and I'm like, hey, these are the components that we need. Here are the things that we're getting rid of. We need to minimize this, and then we're going to do X, Y, Z. Outside of that, the rest is up to you of how you take that direction and translate that into the visual aspects. But if you send me something that, like I said, no squares, and you send me all squares, I'm gonna be pissed off, right? So there are things that, as a marketing professional, I understand. I understand that hard shapes generally give off a different psychological feeling than softer shapes, right? So there are some of those things that, because of my experience, I can work with a designer and say, this isn't right. This isn't communicating what I wanted to communicate, just on like psychological visual aspects. And so I don't pay as much. right? So I'll share that, right? I don't,
Yeah.
Devin. So we have a mutual friend, Devin Green. If you're looking for a logo, he does amazing work. But I will share right now, if you're looking for cheap, he ain't the dude, right? But if you're looking for good, he's the guy.
Yeah. And
Uh,
a little bit of transparency. The reason I said $1,000, I know that most people aren't going to pay that. I like to try to set the bar higher than what's necessary. What I would like to encourage people to do is to, I don't know how to say this. I don't want to say spend as much as you can, but you get what you pay for when you're talking about web developers, graphic designers, content writers. You get what you pay for, and if you want to have a bunch of back and forths and have to do a lot of revisions, go pay a guy $100 to make your logo. If you want, Devin, I love Devin because he's a humble person, but he loves to talk to me about the work that he's doing, and I get this text from him a lot. He'll send me a logo, and he'll be like, "Dude, I sent this to the client, and they loved it, and I didn't have to do any revisions." I get that text from him a lot because he's good at what he does. So, and I don't remember what his website says. I think he charges like $500 for a logo. And a lot of people think that's high, but when you can just give him $500 and come back in 2 or 3 weeks and have a logo that you didn't have to put any effort into, that's a lot better in my opinion than paying someone $100 and having a bunch of back and forth and it takes 2 months because you're making all these revisions. Yeah. So I just kind of like to try to set people's expectations. I hate when people come to me and they think that I'm going to build them a website for $1,000. I know Devin hates it when people come to him and they think they're going to get a logo for $50. So I just want people to understand that you get what you pay for. Absolutely. I've never paid $1,000 for a logo for any of my businesses, but I have paid Devin $1,000 to design logos for my clients.
Yes. So here, and I think it's important that I kind of jump in on this too. This whole getting what you pay for thing. Some of what you pay for is like the cost of your ignorance.
Yep.
And that's again, no shade to anybody listening. Like if you don't know anything about design, you're ignorant about design. And the person that you're working with has to work harder to get something that you're going to be satisfied with. I also think there's some if you're a designer and you work with a designer, y'all understand one another and you're like, I'm not going to ask you for 1 million revisions. We're going to get this done in 2 tops, right? Because I'm going to be very clear about what I want up front. I'm going to give you the guidelines that I need you to follow. And then when it comes back, I'm like, you know what? This doesn't quite. So I just recently had this logo redesigned. And so when I do mine, I usually get someone that sends me 2 to 3 concepts. Mm-hmm. And I prefer that approach.
That's how Devin usually does it too. Yep.
Yeah. I like the option, the choice aspect. And so when they sent me the concepts, I have my team and we sit down and we talk about them because there are components that when I got this concept back, I really liked one. And my team was like, no, you don't really like that one. You like the color combination. I'm like, no. They're like, no, you don't. You like the color combination. And I'm like, they're like, just have the designer use the revision to get this one that actually looks like something that it was like my second pick. Have the designer use the color combination on this one. And if you don't like this one more than the first one that you like, we'll go with that one. And sure enough, right? They changed the color combo. I was like, oh, this is hidden. This is hidden. And so sometimes it pays to have people around you that can help right size you when you're talking about all of this stuff. But it also pays to spend a little time, either be willing to spend the time to learn the stuff or be willing to spend the money so you don't have to.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's where we're going with this. I do agree that a small business owner that doesn't want to have any conversation about the logo, they just want to tell them my vision is to create a future of meatless patties, right? Mm-hmm. And save all the cows and expect that that's going to turn into a logo. You do need to pay.
Yeah.
like a lot, because that's a lot of mental effort to sort that out.
Yeah.
So as we're talking about this idea of like logos and stuff like that, so I don't think we really got into the components. But again, if I can only pick a few things for a small business owner, to like, I want to have a decent brand identity. What would be the things that you're like, you need to at least these few things, and this is going to give you a pretty solid brand identity package.
For a brand identity, you definitely need a logo, because you need something that people can see and remember your business by. There's about a 99% chance you need a website. There's always that one guy that manages to be successful without a website. And every time I meet that guy, I just want to punch him in the throat. But I have a friend who owns a construction business, and he just literally 100% word of mouth. He just does such a great job. His customers freaking love him, and they tell everybody they know, and then they call him. So he doesn't have a website, and it bothers me, but he's the exception to the rule for sure. Because even him, if he had a website, he recently has been trying to say, I only want to do decks and siding. Well, good luck with that, because every customer you work with is going to tell all their friends who want a new kitchen remodel or a new bathroom, or they need a new roof, and you're going to have to turn them all down. If you spend some time on marketing, you could make it clear that these are the things you want to do, whatever. So
yes,
you should probably have a website. And then you should probably also be on social media, and you don't have to be on all the social medias. It depends on what you're doing. So my construction friend guy, I would say he should probably be on Facebook. I don't think
and Nextdoor.
Yeah, I don't have any experience with Nextdoor, but I know what it is. He probably doesn't need to be on LinkedIn. He probably doesn't need to be on Instagram. If you're a graphic designer, you should be on Instagram. You should be on Pinterest. So there's just different social medias for different things, and some people think that they have to be on all of them. That's just a huge waste of your time. And then you need to make sure that you're consistent on all those. Your website, the way your website looks, the way your Facebook looks, as much as you can control how your Facebook looks, should be the same. The messaging should be the same. The way you interact with people on Facebook should be the same way that your website is interacting with people. And those are kind of the three pillars of a brand identity: logo, website, and social media. You may or may not have merchandise and swag. If you have you may have a storefront. We did a brand for a music school here in Cedar Rapids, and it was really cool. This is one of my favorite things. Devin designed this amazing logo, and we put it on the website. That's cool. But then she got a big sign and put it up on her storefront in the mall, and that's just really cool for me to see, for Devin to see. And it also feels good for the customer to have a really nice logo that's this big, that people walk by the mall and they see that. But you may not have that. You might not even have a brick and mortar, so that might be something you don't think about. But maybe you have merchandise,
right? All
sorts of things. But those are the three, I think, pillars that pretty much every business should have: logo, website, and some sort of social media presence.
Cool. There were some other things that you mentioned in there that I think are worth kind of highlighting. You talked about messaging, and then your consistency as far as the way you show up, right? And for those of us that are looking to kind of build up our brand, I will tell you that I think the messaging component and that consistency piece is where you're going to get the most bang for your buck out of the logo, the website, and the social media. Too often we create content once a month, and we're like, I don't know why nobody knows who I am. It's like, if you had a friend that never showed up at the barbecue, would you really call them a friend?
Right.
Like they never come. You never see them. And when you do see them, you're like, oh, snap. Right? Or even worse, because you're not even their friend yet. You're a stranger. Like, if you met somebody 1 month and then 3 months later they showed up, you'd probably be like, hey, nice to meet you. And you're like, oh, no, we met 4 months ago.
Uh-huh.
You're like, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot you. And then you don't show up again for 6 months. And you're like, hey, John. And they're like, do I know you? And you're upset. Like, you can't be upset now.
Yep.
You have open, like, they liked your page, they subscribed to your stuff, and you've not shown up. And like, the thing that we have to realize, and some people don't like to hear this, but social media time is like dog years. So like, you go 1 day, 2 days, 3 days without posting, you got to multiply that by 7. Like, they've lived a month of social media time in that 3 or 4 days, depending on the platform.
Mm-hmm.
Platforms like TikTok and TikTok, IG, Facebook, they move really fast. And so it's like, you posted something 3 days ago, that's dead. Like, nobody even remembers it anymore. And so, like, be mindful of that when you start talking about this consistency piece. I'm going to take a moment to say, there's no such thing as like, you have to post, every day, 3 times a day. That's bull. Just pick something that is something that you can stay with. I post daily, multiple times a day, but do I expect and typically different stuff on different platforms? Like, I've gotten to that point now where I can post, one thing on LinkedIn and one thing on Twitter, and you go to all the different places, and you're like, damn, this is 7 different pieces of content.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm okay with that, right? Like, I figured out how to make it work for me. Do I expect that of everyone that I interact with? No. It took me 5 years to figure out my flow. Like, why would you think that you should? Never mind. Let's move on.
No, that's a really good point. I would like to say, if what you're doing feels like it's too much, then you're doing too much, because what's going to happen is your content's not going to be that good. You're just saying stuff because you feel like, I got to say something every day. What do I say today? Come up with something stupid, and it's just not that good. It's much better to put out good content once a week than to put out crappy content every day. Yeah.
And I'll share one of my things that I've been doing lately that's actually helped me a ton. I stole it from Alex Hormozi. If you don't know who he is, check him out. He's got a channel here on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, check his channel out. And if you're listening on the podcast, he has a podcast called The Game. But he was talking about his content workflow. And he was like, when I think of something, I just post it on Twitter. He's like, I just go on Twitter and I just type it out and I hit tweet. And then at the end of the week, I look at all the tweets that I posted. And then all those tweets become my content for the next week, right? He's like, I go in and I add some context and I get rid of the stuff that didn't perform at all. And I only keep the stuff that did okay, right? And so I've been doing something similar. I don't tweet all of my thoughts, and I'm working on doing better.
I would subscribe to that. If you just tweeted every thought that came to your head, hard subscribe. I would love to read that.
I think a lot of people would. It would not be good. It would not be good. But especially like anything that I think is relevant to the content that I create or the business that I'm building, right? Like, I think it has value, because then you have a living document of content. And that's part of this whole thing, as far as like being consistent and even the branding stuff is like, you have to lower the bar of what you think, like the expectations up here, but your ability to execute's down here. So we gotta lower the bar and work up to the expectation. So that's that soapbox. This consistency thing on social media is a tough one for me,
mm-hmm.
because like I look up to, and most marketers do, Gary Vee, right? And he talks about how much you should post on each platform. I look up to the dude. I think he's cool people. Sometimes that his statement about you should be posting 4 or 5 times a day on TikTok gets taken out of context. And then you go back and you watch all of his other stuff, and he's like, no, if you can only post once, just post once. He's like, post the maximum amount of time that you can handle. And I think sometimes that communication gets lost in some of the stuff that he creates.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like what we were talking about earlier. If you can pay $1,000 for a logo to get a really good designer on your logo, do it. But I'm not saying that you have to, and your business is going to fail if you don't. If all you got is $200, do what you got to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So you and I, before we got on here, we were talking about Chat GPT and some of the other AI tools that are popping off. So like there's an AI brand building company called Taylor Brands. And then you have companies like Chat GPT that can create really cool stuff that really can be a jumping off point for you creating your branding and your messaging. So with the growth and mass or not even mass adoption. I say that, but we're not in a point of mass adoption. But with the growth of these AI tools and so many of them popping up, and I think we're on the cusp of this mass adoption place. Like, why should somebody still consider talking to a branding professional at this point when like I could pop over to Taylor Brands and get my brand done and like get my brand identity done
Mm-hmm.
in 45 minutes?
Yeah. So full disclosure, I'm not super familiar with Taylor Brands.
Yeah.
I've been very, I don't want to say like anti AI, but I've been very skeptical of AI. And every time I see an ad
Mhm.
for, these AI content generators, I'm just like,
Yeah.
that's stupid. There's no way that would actually be any good. And then I had a job as a product owner, and I was in a meeting with the marketing director, and she was all excited about some AI tool, and she kind of demoed it for me, and the demo didn't go very well. And she was like, "Oh, well, it usually works better." And I'm like, "I doubt it." And so I've just been very like who in their right mind would trust an AI with their content? And then Chat GPT came out, and my head exploded. I tried it out, and it's it's ridiculous how good it is. I feel like
Yeah.
AI content generation kind of like took a leap. Like it went from like to whoa, like almost overnight. It's still like I wouldn't if I was Apple, I wouldn't replace all the content on my website with AI generated copy. But
Yeah.
here's one thing: you talk about people like Gary Vee, and there's some other anybody who deals with SEO will tell you if you're a small business, you should probably be blogging. Blogging will increase the SEO of your website. You can share your expertise, write blog posts about what you think people are Googling, et cetera, et cetera. It will boost your SEO. And people are like, okay, that's great, but I suck at writing. I hate writing. And they'll say, you should blog this many times a month or this many times a week. And you think, oh, that's too much. I can't do that. You know what? Again, if you're Apple, no, hire somebody. But if you're, I don't know, if you're even, I would say even if you're Eclipse, I would say you could probably get away with using something like AI to write some blog posts. And you don't have to just copy and paste what comes out of the AI. You probably should proofread it and maybe, make some tweaks or whatnot. But it is a great tool. I have to admit, I don't think it's going to take my job, but it is a great tool that I think you could use to, if you're the kind of person like me who's intimidated by generating consistent content, tools like Chat GPT can really help out. I wouldn't outsource your entire marketing to an AI bot, of course, but absolutely use it and know that the people you hire, there's a good chance that they might also be using it, at least as like you said, a starting off point. One thing I like to use the Chat GPT for is to come up with ideas, not necessarily to write my content, but if you're out there and you're trying to figure out, I know I should be blogging, but what should I blog about? Go to Chat GPT and type in, give me 10 blog ideas for whatever industry that you're in.
Yeah.
Boom, there's 10 ideas, and now you can go start writing. So as far as coming up with your brand, though, I think AI right now is a lot better at generating copy than it is at generating graphics. I don't know what this TaylorMade does. If you can go in, if it generates a logo for you with AI.
It does. But the way that it does it is still pretty, it's still pretty early stage, right? So and I'm not going to profess to be an AI expert, but my assumption is it has like predefined elements, and then they've input enough logos or designs based on different industries that it will essentially take the elements and layer them on top of one another to create this logo. It's, in my opinion, it's all right. If you don't, if you want something to just like, let me put it this way. So I have my new brand that I'm dropping, right? If I was going to then create a separate, name underneath it so that I could get really specific to a general audience, right? Which I think it has some values. So it's like, let's say, for argument's sake, let's say I was making widgets for real estate agents, and then I decided to make widgets for insurance agents. Well, I might change my website to be real estate agent widget. And if I just want like a rinky dink logo to put next to that, cool. Right? I'm not building a brand around this. I need this on a landing page. Mm-hmm. And I need 20 of them because I'm creating 20 separate landing pages that speak to the individual messaging. I think something like Tailor Brands is absolutely amazing. The challenge with it is that there is no ability yet to customize the output to make like minor tweaks. So you're just kind of, I don't want to say stuck with the output because you can refresh, but they all look pretty similar, right? There's that flat icon look. I would say very like when you first starting out as a designer, these are the logos that you design. So I think that designers have like ChatGPT is very conversational right now. At some point, that technology will be integrated into something like Tailor Brands.
Yeah. So it comes up with a logo and you can say, could you try, lowering the hue on those blues a little bit? And then it'll like regenerate based on your input.
Yeah. Or it'll get really good. Cause like you think about like this, if you talk to enough brand designers or logo designers and you're like, what are the 27, what are the questions that you ask to pull out the vision for your client's logo? At some point, you're going to get some repetition in these questions. And then you have each one of them answer the question to like, give me a brief where you answer these and then design a logo, right? And you do that enough times, you could teach the AI what a good input is, right? And then the AI could coach someone through this. Like, hey, I actually need a little more detail here. And with enough like different logo styles, it could generate, because then you have things like what is the AI generated art that people were doing for like NFTs?
Wally?
That's
Dolly?
There's a bunch of them now. But it's DALL-E, DALLE. The art's good. Like it's solid. If you know how to tell the AI what to do. Mm-hmm. So it takes some training for you to be able to produce a solid output. And I think that's part of the issue that we're seeing with like any type of AI design is that I probably could go to DALL-E right now and design a logo that would be amazing. But I have to know what each piece of the input is going to do in order for me to create that output that I want. And that takes a lot of trial and error, a lot of testing. And so it's not there yet. But
and if you're not a designer, then you're probably going to struggle to get something good.
Yes.
Because you think about, if you watch The Simpsons, there's an episode where Homer designs a car because like his brother-in-law or something owns a car company and thinks, oh, Homer's the everyday man and he's my target audience. So I should let him design a car. And it turns out to be garbage. And that's kind of, I think that would happen if you don't know anything about design and you go to an AI tool and try to come up with a logo. The The problem with AI is it's going to be literal. It's a computer. You're going to type an input in and it's going to generate something based on that input. What you need is a designer who is intuitive and is able to. Customers are quite often not great at explaining to you what they want, and a good designer is able to figure it out anyways. And an AI is not going to be able to do that. They're just going to, whatever you input, they're going to do something based on that input. A designer is going to take your input and go, that's what they said, but based on the other things that they said, I think this is probably what they're really looking for.
Yes. And until AI can get that connection, right? Which I think, I'm not gonna lie, ChatGPT is I don't want to say close, but it is the first step to that. Because like the other day, I was messing around in it, and I had to tell it to forget every other piece of information I provided it, so that it would stop giving me like outputs that had context from my original inputs, right? Mm-hmm. And so like that's something where you're like, oh, you're learning what I'm doing and giving me the outputs based on what I was looking for, right? And that's cool and all, but then it'll do things like I was helping someone do and this is where someone's like, wait, you were using AI to do this? Yes, I was. I was helping someone redo their table of contents for their book. And they had the like literal like chapter 1, chapter 2. And I'm like, okay, this is boring. Like no one is going to look at your table of contents and go, I want to read chapter 5. Like chapter 5, here's what it is. So we were rewriting those to be more like headline based. And to be honest, I don't want to rewrite. It's 28 chapters. I don't want to rewrite 28 chapters and come up with headlines for 28 things. No. What is the chapter about? Okay, tell me what it's about. And this is the part where I think we're in alignment that like that client doesn't have the wherewithal to use the tool because they'll go, well, it's the title of the chapter because that's what I already wrote. No, the AI needs more context. It needs you to tell it, okay, the chapter is about this. Give me a headline that is modeled like this. Make it punchy and don't do this. And then you get some halfway decent outputs that even then you have to look at it and go, from my experience, I know that that's not a good headline, but if I take this and I take this and smash them together, I'm going to get something pretty magical, right? And I think this goes with what you were saying as far as like, it's not ready to replace brand strategists, logo designers yet because AI can't do that yet. So that's good context, man. I love that. You'll have to, when you get off here, you'll have to check out Taylor Brands and just have them design you a logo. Matter of fact, do it for a cigar shop. Do it for a cigar shop. That's like, I don't know, about just something really cringy, right? And see what it gives you. Like a cigar shop where all you talk about is like politics and religion and see what it comes up with. I'd be interested in that output. Yeah. But that is pretty much what we have time for today. I do have one question that I just want to follow up with. If you're looking, side note before we get into the final question for the show today, if you would like to get in touch with James, I have linked his LinkedIn below in the show notes and description below. Feel free to touch base with him on LinkedIn. If you have questions about branding or you're looking for a brand strategist, just know he's not going to do it for $100. So be ready to put some money down if that's something that you need. The final question for today is, if the listener could only take one thing away from the entire conversation, what would that be?
You have a brand whether you think you do or not. Whether you put any effort into crafting it or not, you have one. And that's important to know, because if you don't put the effort into crafting your brand, you're going to end up with a brand that you don't like or that's not working for you. So that's why I tell people to at least be thinking about your brand on day one. You don't have to hire somebody on day one, but be thinking about your brand day one, because you have a brand. Every single business has a brand, whether they try to have one or not.
Yeah. That's the one. I think it's that's finally put me in a position where I was like, all right, I'm not gonna talk crap about branding anymore, but I still have my hang-ups.
Dude, branding and marketing, there's so many YouTube videos of people arguing and debating over which one's more important, what the differences are between the two. And I mean, they're just both so important. I think branding, a lot of people don't like it for the reasons we talked about. It's just so hard to measure. Marketing is so much easier to measure the effectiveness of it. But that doesn't make branding any less important. And if you're going to get all on board with branding, don't neglect your marketing either. Marketing is I mean, you almost can't have a business without marketing. I mean, you got to tell people what you're doing. And also, if you're going to spend all this time crafting a brand, but nobody ever interacts with it, I mean, that's what marketing is you getting out there and saying, hey, everybody, look at my brand, right? If you're crafting your brand, but you're never telling anybody about it, what's the point? No one's ever gonna, like you said, if you're not showing up to the barbecue, no one's gonna know who you are.
Right. Well, that's a wrap for today's episode of Marketing Stuff. We hope you enjoyed the nuggets that we shared. Make sure you don't miss a thing and get access to today's nuggets. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button. Check out the links in the description below. If you'd like a copy of today's episode, that'll be there for you. You can download it as a PDF so you can get the notes. We can't wait for you to join us on the next show, where we'll continue to bring the latest and greatest in marketing. Thanks for listening. And until next time, stay out here winning, y'all.